Hey everybody, this is Jeff. In my last video, I talked about how to access Galileo. So if you don't know or recognize the page that I'm on, just go back and watch that video. But today, I'm going to try to walk you through the research process. So this video is going to be a little long, but I'll have it broken up by links so that you can access the specific point that you want to start at if you want to re-watch it. So we're going to talk about starting from a research question. So when you have a research question, how to approach Galileo. And so the first thing that I am going to do is to show you the research question that I'm considering. So I'm going to look at the effect of job loss, poverty, financial strain on maternal well-being and parenting. This is the question that I'm going to look at. Well, whenever you're coming into Galileo, you want to, well, what I normally would do is I will create what's called a term table. So a term table is exactly what it sounds like. It's a table that I'm creating, and I'm going to fill it with different terms taken from my research question. So when I look at this this particular question, we're looking at the idea of job loss as a term, and then maternal well-being is another idea here. And so, and then I guess we could have put effect at the beginning there. But what I want to demonstrate is that really poverty is another way to measure job loss. Also, financial strain is a way to measure that as well. Now, maternal well-being, and we have and parenting, but really that's an or. Like, are we going to look at maternal well-being or how it impacts parenting? Those aren't two separate. They really aren't going to find articles that deal with both of those things. But I'm going to put or parenting here. And then if we wanted to, we could look at some effects such as depression or stress. And then there are other variations that we may look at. And so we could say not only parenting, but we could look at parenting young children, for example. And that's just a way that we could, as we're brainstorming, we may think of how to narrow it down. So this is what I'm setting up. And so typically I do not start with all of these things in one go. What I may do is what I will do in this session is that I'm going to show you how to work from broad to narrow. So it's not the only way to do it, but this is the way that I will typically do it. So what I may do is come into Galileo, and I'm going to separate my terms out and search them individually. So I'm going to isolate my terms. Now there are lots of places that you can search. In the module that I placed in D2L, I talked about the different nursing databases that you may want to use. Now Discover, we'll call this the Discover search, which is the default search on Galileo, searches many databases. It's not a database in itself, it's just a search engine really that searches across lots of different databases. When you're searching broad and narrow, this is a great place to start your search. So as I isolate my terms, I'm going to start with job loss. So I enter in my search term there, and I'm prompted to sign in with my Unify account, and that should take me right into my results in Galileo. So the purpose of me isolating my terms is so that I can see whether or not the search, the way that I am wording it, really brings back what I expected and relevant results. So the first thing I'll look through is the title, and I just scan this detailed record here to see if if my terminology is really reflected in how it is worded. And so I want to see is my wording bringing back relevant results? Can I discover other terms that are related and that I may want to explore as well? So as I'm looking through this, right off the bat, one thing that I do notice is the idea of unemployment. You can see here, unemployment. So on my term table, I may want to list out another option here for as unemployment. And I want to keep track of any of these different variations that I may want to try later on. The other thing to consider is that the wording and subjects here are going to change depending on what type of item you're looking for. So since we are most primarily dealing with academic journal articles, I'm going to go ahead and limit it by type so that it will give me a little bit more consistency in how in the way my items are described. So now I'm looking through job loss, well-being. That's interesting. I haven't even talked about well-being yet, and this one is bringing it up. So job loss, young adults, job loss. So I feel pretty confident that job loss is a good term for me. So let me show you how. You can see I have 1.4 million. Well, one thing that you can do to begin to get a little bit more specific, this is probably, we're taking intermediate steps of moving broad to narrow. So we can see that job loss is a phrase and not actually just a single term. So if I place it in quotes, it's going to deal with it as a phrase. It's going to put job and loss together. And so we go from, and sometimes when you make a change up there, you can lose your limit. So I'm going to go ahead and add back in academic journal articles. And I can see here what I've searched. So you may want to keep an eye on this to make sure that you're searching what you think you're searching. So now that I've added in those quotes, we can see that job loss went from 1.4 million down. It went from 1.4 million down to 100,000 basically. So that's a good limit, and we want to keep an eye on that to see, how many that results those are, because inevitably when we go, let's say, so here we have job loss and it brings up 100,000. Well, anything else that we add as an and is going to automatically reduce the number from 100,000. We can't add something as if we wanted to include job loss and maternal well-being and it expand out the results. It's automatically going to be less. We're saying that in this group of 100,000, we only want to see the ones that specifically mention maternal well-being. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and jump to a new search and let's test out our next phrase, which is maternal well-being. And so I'm going to enter that in, and I'm actually searching maternal and well-being. Let's go ahead and limit it by academic journal so that the descriptions are consistent. And so now we have 78,000. So I'm looking through it, and here we have maternal health and well-being, maternal incarceration, maternal well-being, its relationship, blah, 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 fetal maternal well-being, maternal attitudes. So this is important because you want to know, like, is this the best way? Is maternal well-being really the phrasing that I want to use, or is there something different that I need to use? Maternal mental health and well-being, postnatal maternal well-being, postpartum depression. So one thing that I feel like I'm noticing here is that Maternal well-being really isn't consistently, I don't feel like consistently used, even though there is this phrase of maternal well-being. There is room there for us to explore some variations, and it may be a little bit vague, and we may need to further define what we mean by well-being. How are we going to measure well-being? And so, are we going to measure it in terms of depression? Are we going to be specific to postpartum depression, or are we going to measure it in terms of stress? Or how are we going to measure it in terms of how they are parenting? So those are all options. But for the sake of this video, we're going to go with maternal well-being as a phrase, just to show you how it works. So now with maternal well-being limited to academic journals, we have 2,000 results. So now that we've explored both of these and we're interested in both of these phrases, we need to combine them. Well, the easiest way to combine is to click on Advanced Search, and we can add in our two phrases, and then we're going to search these together, and then we're going to limit it as to academic journals. So notice that we have only 10 results. So when we combine job loss, which was 100,000, maternal well-being, which was 2,000, when we combine these together, we get 10 results. So we have, right, it's kind of like a Venn diagram, but we're only using 2 circles. And the overlap between these, say if that's 100,000 and this is 2,000, the overlap right here between the two is 10 results. So that little bit right there is what we're getting. So this is definitely, we would want to explore these 10 results, yet we also need to think about how we could expand out our results. So in the next video, I'm going to show you is how to evaluate these 10 and how to expand out our results. All right, look forward to talking with you in the next video.